Welcome back to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren, and I'm joined today by Brian Tibbs, a once low-paid missionary with multi-million-dollar net worth. At age 26, Brian was investing in real estate, an executive in his dad's financial services company, and co-owner of another small online retailer. But Brian felt called down a different path. Over the next 3 years, Brian married Jill Bramhall, resigned from his father's company, sold his online business, and liquidated 60% of his real estate portfolio. Then he moved sight unseen to Guatemala. They became missionaries, raising over $20 million for their cause and building over 150,000 square feet of churches and related facilities. Brian and his family made very little money as missionaries, just $9.20 per hour. Their modest salary forced them to create a wealth building philosophy that didn't require a big paycheck. Living under this financial constraint is how the hacker method was discovered and implemented. Although Brian has retired from full-time missionary work, his desire to serve others remains his primary focus. He launched the Unexpected Investor with the singular goal of helping other people who also feel financially constrained to transform themselves into wealthy, powerful, and generous investors using this hacker method. Thanks for joining me, Brian.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So our goal for today, as it always is to make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a huge part of adulting. Today, Brian, we're going to talk about building your net worth on a low income.
Great. That sounds awesome. Let's do it.
So in your bio, it sounded a bit like you had an aha moment that you weren't on the right path. Is that true, or did it kind of come on more slowly than that?
No, it actually, the whole process from when I kind of first felt that I needed to go down a different path to when I actually accepted that I was going to, or decided to go down a different path, it took about a year. So it
Okay.
really was kind of slow and honestly agonizing. I didn't want to do it. I've always kind of been drawn to business, and real estate was very fascinating to me. And I felt like I was on that track, and I was kind of figuring that out, maybe not doing it perfect, but I felt like I was learning and growing, and I just didn't want to leave that. But I also had this real strong feeling that my life needs to be about more than that. And so, yeah, so it took a year.
How'd you decide to do it? Like pros and cons list or what?
No, I just had this very deep conviction. Um, the nonprofit that I ran was a faith-based, and so I felt like God was leading me in that direction. And if I really genuinely thought that was happening, then I would be disobedient if I wouldn't answer that calling. And so I finally came to the conclusion that yes, I'm going to give up a lot, and I'm probably going to be miserable for the rest of my life. I felt that way, right? I'm probably going to be miserable for the rest of my life, but I do want for my life to count, and I do want to have a positive impact on the world. And so that's when I finally came to the conclusion that, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to look back. And yeah, so that's what I did. And everybody thought
So
I was crazy, including me.
any moments of regret after you made that decision at all?
I often would tell that story after I was in the field and speaking in front of national audiences, so Guatemalans or Peruvians or Argentines or Brazilians or whatever, or even Europeans, and I would say there's no other place on earth I'd rather be than right here with you guys. And that was true because I felt like my life was being used to have a positive impact on people's lives. I mean, we did everything from, yes, it was church-based work, but we helped women escape prostitution. We helped repair marriages. We helped kids that were orphans. We helped widows. We really were pouring into the lives of people in the communities that we were serving. And that was incredibly satisfying to me.
I've got to ask a stupid question. How do you become a missionary? I mean, is there like a LinkedIn job board for like, how does this happen?
Honestly, I had no idea either. And I just thought it was a preposterous idea. Nobody in my family was a missionary. Nobody in my family were pastors. We were Christians, but we weren't like involved in ministry per se. So I honestly didn't know. And so I just happened to be a part of a local church where I was going. And so I asked, so like, what do I do now? And they gave me a phone number, and I called that number, and they said, okay, well, we have an opportunity in Guatemala. So I was like, okay. So I called the guy in Guatemala, and it was actually kind of a joke. I called him and said, hey, I'm thinking of coming to work for you. Can I interview you? And he just laughed. He goes, how about I interview you? And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, of course, that's what I meant. And so we met. They happened to be in the US, and we met, had coffee, and then they invited me and my wife and I, we were dating at the time. And then after we got married, then we moved to Guatemala and started our work. And we were just volunteers in an office, helping shuffle papers for that first year. And then the next year is when we started our own nonprofit.
Okay. I was going to ask how you get paid. So it's through a nonprofit. And there's a tug and pull here because your nonprofit is raising money to do incredible work, but you also need to be paid. Like how
Right.
how do you like deal with that balance?
So our primary mission was, once we started our own nonprofit, our primary mission was to find, train, and send missionaries out to do this work that we're doing: church planting, community development, working in the orphanages, all that kind of stuff. And we asked all of our missionaries to raise their own support. So they were responsible to go to their friends and family and say, hey, would you give me $50 a month, $100 a month to support my living expenses? And so we did the same thing. Like, we set the example. And so now when we were in Guatemala, we were strictly volunteers. We just lived on whatever money we had. And you read in the bio that we sold our business, sold some of our real estate, and we were just living off of that. Um, and then after we got the nonprofit started, and after the team was in place, and after things were moving, then we started to raise our own support. And that's why we only made $9.20. If you take the total pay we received, like W-2 pay from our nonprofit, divided by the hours that we worked over those 16 years, it was $9.20 an hour. So pretty small uh, income that we were raising, but our focus was the mission. It wasn't on having a big salary.
So something that I hear a lot is I can't afford to invest because I don't
Yeah,
make enough money. What do you say
right.
to people that think that way?
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about the book that I have coming out. So I wrote the book specifically for that person, because how did I come to the conclusion of this? I knew that the church was never going to provide for me financially after we were done. Right? It was barely doing so while we were in the field, and as soon as we said I quit, it's over. There's no retirement. There's no pension. There's no, I mean, there's even minimal social security, because for some of those years we weren't even recording income and all that kind of stuff. So I knew it was on me to make sure that our family was going to be able to survive after this. And so I just figured it out along the way. And the answer to that person is the first section in my book, when I talk about the hacker method, is H, hack your lifestyle. And I go through the 5 major categories that you've got to think about differently than society tells you. Like, society tells you as soon as you get out of college, you need to get a house, and it needs to be 2,500 square feet, and it needs to have 3-car garage, and you need a pool in the backyard because you got to unwind after work, and you got to have a brand new car, and you got to have all this stuff. Okay. So I always say wealthy people buy luxuries last. And a brand new home and a brand new car and a pool, those are luxuries. And I don't encourage people to live a no frills life, but I encourage people to think strategically long term and prioritize what they're spending their money on so that they can invest. Because if you do what society tells you to do, the big house, the new car, all that stuff, there's no room to invest. But if you're wise and careful about how and when you spend on some of those luxury items, and instead of spending on all that stuff, invest it, you can become a multimillionaire, even if you're making minimum wage.
Especially early on. You
Yes,
can
the
look
sooner the better.
rich. You can look rich or you can be rich. Like
Exactly.
that's really what it comes down to. And I think there's some famous quote, but it's like some people want to be a millionaire because they want to spend $1 million. But that's the
Right.
opposite of being a millionaire. You've got to
Yeah.
keep $1 million.
Exactly right. If you spend all your money to look rich now, you're going to look rich your entire life, and you're going to be broke your entire life. If you can live within your means and invest a significant portion of your paycheck now, you might not look rich right now, but you will be rich in not too distant in the future. And instead of buying one brand new car, buy 3, buy 4. You're going to have financial strength, real financial strength, not just credit that's been given to you that you're going to kill yourself trying to pay back.
Yeah, that's true. And if you look rich your whole life, it's almost like what you were talking about, which you weren't rich, but being the missionary, if you weren't putting anything away, that income dries up, that you stop working and it's over for you
Yeah.
if you don't plan. And you like that is such a terrifying thought for me and just just getting into my psyche, but I know some people around me that are like on that path and it
Mhm.
really stresses me out to watch them spend everything. So I'm like, what is your plan? What are you gonna
Yeah.
do when you don't work anymore?
That's the paycheck to paycheck trap is that you're literally just one small economic hiccup away from a disaster,
Yeah.
and it's avoidable.
So going back to the hacker method that you developed in your book, and we'll have links to that stuff in the show notes as well. But so H is hack your lifestyle. Can you tell me a little bit about that one, and then we'll go through the rest of it? I mean, I'm very familiar with house hacking.
Yeah.
It's what I do, where I live in a house and I have two accessory dwelling units in my backyard that are rented out on Airbnb. So I'm very familiar with that. Like, but what other ways can you hack your lifestyle?
Yeah. So that's the biggest one, or that's the one that can have the biggest impact on your future worth. And if you do it the way I hear you saying it, it's actually of minimal intrusion on your privacy. It's a separate dwelling in your property. You can fence it off, even make a separate entrance and all that kind of stuff. And it can literally cover your housing expenses or more.
Yeah.
And that's the number one expense most people have. There's a statistic that somewhere between 25 and 50% is what people are spending on average on their income on housing. It's very difficult to build wealth, especially if you have a low income, if you're putting 30, 40, 50% of your income towards your housing. So house hack, and I mean your audience, I think, sounds like that they understand that concept.
Yeah.
The second biggest one is our vehicles. We so many people have two brand new cars in their garage and they're spending north of $1,000 or even $2,000 a month on their cars, on their vehicles. So I did some math. I created a formula called the Logic Vehicle Ownership Formula, and each of the letters LOGIC stand for um, some other part of owning vehicles that will, if you can memorize the logic, the next time you go buy a car, and if you practice this over 20 years, you will save from saving money on your vehicles and then investing the difference, right? So instead of spending the $1,500 a month on cars, you spend $500 a month on cars, invest the $1,000. Over 20 years, you will have generated $1.2 million, right? Just on buying vehicles that you can afford. They don't have to be ugly and beaten up and junk, but they need to be something that you can afford, and they need to stop acting as like an anchor on your financial life, holding you to the bottom of the ocean. You need to float up and start sailing to your destination.
Yeah, I think
So that's the second.
the average new car payment, is it 1,000 or 700? Like it's
It's
way
like
up there.
insane. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And it
And I
depends on the car you get.
and I always say like, hey, if you value cars for whatever reason and you want to spend $1,000, I'm sort of okay with it, but I want people to understand exactly what you're talking about, Brian,
Yeah.
where what is the opportunity cost? What are you
Yes.
giving up to do that? Are you not contributing to your 401k? Are you not maxing out your Roth
Yeah.
IRA? Are you not saving? Are you paying interest on credit cards while doing that? That's the
Yeah.
thing that people need to understand. So I love that. I love that logic method. So
Yeah.
what's the A?
So A is allocation budgeting. So what our family did to get us to where we're at today, from minimum wage to multi-million dollar net worth, is we worked within the 50-40-10 budget. So 50% of our income we could spend, 40% of our income we invested, and 10% we gave away to make the world a better place. So we changed the world through our generosity, right? And if anybody listening to this is going to say there is no way I can live on 50% of my income, I would point you back to the Hack Your Lifestyle section. That's how we did it, and we did it on minimum. In fact, $9.20 is like $3 under minimum wage for where I live now in Arizona. It's like $13 and something cents. And so we figured it out because we house hacked, we did the vehicle logic, we did all the other stuff that's in the Hack Your Lifestyle section. Then take that 40% and invest it. And if you can do that, even if you're on minimum wage and you do that, you will be a millionaire at 14 years and you'll be a multimillionaire at 18 years, right? And once you're in that category, you don't need a job. You can your assets and your investments can pay for your lifestyle, and it will continue to grow. One of the things that drives me crazy about financial planning is they'll say, okay, you're going to retire at 70 and you're going to live till 95. How do you know that? You're going to live till 95. So we're going to take this much out of your nest egg every month until we land the plane at 95 years old. I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? Build a net worth that's going to kick off enough cash flow that your nest egg doesn't go away, it grows, right? And if you can do this, it's not only are you going to become a multimillionaire, you're going to be financially free, but you're going to have a legacy. You're going to have multi-millions to pass on either to your favorite charity or to your kids or to the college you went to or whatever it is you want to do.
As a side note, as a personal finance side note, I want to call out that you said 14 years to be a millionaire, 18 until you hit your second million. That's compounding at its finest.
Yeah,
That's wonderful. And that's why getting that first one and doing it early and as early
yeah.
as possible matters so much.
Time is one of the biggest parts of this. It just is. Yeah.
All right. What about the C?
C is so hacker C and K are one step.
Okay.
Okay. So I know that's kind of different. I've had a couple of people, well, what's K? So CK is cash is king investing. And it's just kind of a clever title to give people an introduction to investing. So my website is theunexpectedinvestor.com. And I'm working with people who maybe today don't think of themselves as investors. Like you think investor, you think Wall Street, you think a skyscraper, a big building, a guy with a bunch of stuff in his head that you're never going to learn. Forget all that. In order for you to break out of the paycheck to paycheck trap, you have to become an investor. And I know I'm talking to the choir here, right? With your audience, Lauren. So, but it's the introduction to how do you go from that consumer-based mindset to the mindset of I hold the cash, I set the rules because I'm an investor, and 40% of my income is going into my investments. And another thing I'd like to say, bouncing back to the allocation budgeting, 50% of my income, that's such a small constraint. You need to start investing. You need to start having some exit events. You need to start having some big hauls coming into your cash. Take half of that and live on it as well so that your standard of living is constantly growing as your net worth is growing. So cash is king investing.
Got it. That's a good point. All right. So we have HACKE.
It's a word that I don't, maybe I didn't invent it, but it's not a real word. It's exponentiality. So the whole concept is, if you're a saver, and I don't encourage people to save, I encourage people to invest. Saving is better than spending, but investing is better than saving. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, good
If
point.
you are a saver, you're doing addition math because the interest is, I mean, especially in this low interest rate environment that they're coming out of. But I mean, it's less than 1% interest. You're not even keeping up with inflation. So as you put money into the account, you just need to do addition. As an investor, you need to learn multiplication and exponential multiplication. And that was that thing that you talked about. You pointed out that a millionaire at 14, a multimillionaire at 18. How do you go from 0 to a million in 14 years and then from 1 to 2 in 4? It's exponential forces on investing. And so in the exponentiality chapter, I talk about infinite returns, like figuring out how to invest a portion. Once it doubles in value, take your initial investment out. Now your profits are paying you a paycheck forever, and you get your capital back. So concepts like that, and just learning that concept of exponential returns with time and inputs as you continue to invest.
So as you were being a missionary and following your allocation budgeting, what were you investing in?
Yeah, so I've always been drawn to real estate. And so this is not, my book is not a real estate investment book. It's more of general investing. But I have a chapter about real estate investing and how it's been so powerful for me. And so, and when I moved to Guatemala and then later to Peru and Argentina and Ecuador and all those places, I still did have a few units, and I just slowly continued as my 40% budget got bigger, and as I sold buildings that had appreciated, then I would upgrade and added units. And so we went from the 4 units when we moved to 17 when we were done. And then when I came back, we doubled again. And now we're at 30, 35. So yeah, mostly real estate, but I also invest in stocks. I try to keep some some diversity in the portfolio. Plus, it's kind of like a game, the stock market.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm with you. We definitely have some stocks. I don't know. We're about like a third stocks, a third real estate, and then a third my husband has owns this engineering firm. So
Oh, cool.
that's why I was just curious about what you were investing in. Okay. R.
So R is actually 4 letters. And are you familiar with Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets?
Sure.
Okay. So I just was on his new A Better Life podcast, and he goes, "How come you didn't call it hacker?" Because after his
Like the
burr.
burr.
Exactly, exactly. And we all got a good laugh. And
Eh,
and so anyway, so the R stands for review. In anything that you do, even if you have a paycheck job, you're going to have an annual review with your boss, right? You need to review how you're doing. You need to review your investments. You can't just set it and forget it and not pay attention. So you need to review it. If everything's going great, then repeat it. Sometimes people like me, entrepreneurs, we get distracted by shiny objects and we want to chase down the newest asset class. That's a mistake unless you really think it through. Or it's only not a mistake if the third R, which is rework, if your initial investments are not working anymore, the economy has changed, technology has changed, you have changed, whatever, the environment has changed, you need to rework your strategy. So in my example, I went from being a traditional landlord for like a 12-month lease landlord to in 2016, I recognized that Airbnb and short-term rentals was a way to make more money from the same building. So I converted to short-term rentals
Yep.
in 2016. So that was a major pivot, but I did it thoughtfully and I did it for the right reasons. And then the fourth R is the most fun and an important R. It's reward. So something that we can do as wealth builders is we can get so focused that we will sacrifice ourselves to keep the engine going. And I'm guilty of that as well. And I want to encourage people, allow yourself to take the full 50%, because when you get to the point to where you're having massive exits, like let's say you make $1 million in 1 year, it's fun to see that grow and you might be tempted. I've already got my expenses covered. I'm good. I'm going to plow it all into the next investment. I would encourage you to take 500,000 out, and you don't have to spend it immediately, but that is your reward. Enjoy that. I think it's greedy in a certain sense not to allow yourself to enjoy some of the blessing that you received. So the reward is the fourth R.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, so just to recap, hack your lifestyle, allocation budgeting, cash is king, that's the C and the K. Exponentiality, which I'm typing up in Word and it doesn't have a squiggle under it.
Oh,
Uh,
maybe it is a word. Okay.
and then the R is review, repeat, or rework, and reward. And something about the rework, which I just want to say, great book, by the way, Rework. Um,
Oh, yeah.
if you have changed, I think a lot of times we think about the environment, we think about, maybe the stock market changing or the real estate market's changing or interest rates, the economy. We think about those things, but I like that you said rework things if you have changed.
Yeah.
That's a big deal that I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever heard anybody talk about. And just to to double click on the reward portion, you're almost like sacrilegious here. I feel like with the whole like you get a big chunk, you get 500 grand, spend half of it. That's epic. Like I kind of like it, but like I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. And I've read a lot of personal finance books. I've done a lot of these interviews. I'm all over Twitter in the personal finance Twitter X sphere. That's epic. I like it.
Well, what I
That's
would
cool.
do, it's an angle on the hack your lifestyle. If I had a 500,000, if I had $1 million exit and I got 500,000, I'd buy a house with no debt that I live in. All of my real estate that I invest in has debt, and I believe that healthy amounts of debt is a good thing. But keep ratcheting down your living expenses. Even if you still house hack and you rent out the ADU in the backyard, now you've got positive cash flow. You're living for free, and that just makes it so much more powerful to continue to invest and to get multiplication and that exponentiality. So I'm not saying, I mean, if you want to go buy a boat and a whatever, whatever. But I do believe, I mean, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I do believe that we need to reward ourselves through the journey, because in the very beginning, it might feel a little tight. It might feel like a little bit of a little bit of a sacrifice. So let's have that reward down the road where we can actually say, okay, Now I'm going to go buy 2 brand new cars with cash, and the salesman's going to have his jaw on the counter. Like, how are you doing this?
Yeah. This is something I think about a lot whenever my husband does sell his firm. What will we do with
Yeah.
that? And he's like, we should buy a 10-unit apartment building. I'm like, but like, you really want a Porsche. Maybe you should also buy the Porsche. You know what I mean?
Do both, right? Figure out how to do both. Maybe it's an 8 unit complex and a
Yeah.
Porsche, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, what's the impact on that? You've gotten to the point now where you're being so successful, like you could just really miss out on living life. They say that youth is wasted on the young. We're young and we should take advantage of this, and we should enjoy our lives because we made the big sacrifice in the beginning.
I think what happens with some people, and this is a little bit of a side tangent, if you don't reward yourself still while you're relatively young, like I'm in my 30s, if we don't do that, I don't know that you ever will, because there's a little bit of
Yeah,
like habit
totally.
that gets formed. Like, how many people do you know that are retired that have plenty of money that like still will not spend it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so it's like if you let yourself do that for decade after decade after decade, I don't know that you ever will go back. It's almost like you need to exercise that reward muscle, a little bit early, not too early, right? We
Yeah.
talked about the
Right.
timing thing, right? But exercise it when you can. You don't need to leave all your chips on the table all the time.
Right. If you're following the 50-40-10, and you have the money in your account, in your 50% account, why not buy dinner for your whole family of 20 people and just
Yeah.
bless them, right? Just like, oh wow, thanks. Why not? That's fun.
I wouldn't, because I'd be afraid they'd want it the next time. But
You're
that's just
right.
my
I
feeling.
know.
Oh, we're going out to dinner. Probably Lauren's going to pay again, right?
Yeah, right.
Just kidding. Love you guys if you're listening. Brian, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
So I was looking on your website and I saw a tweet between you and Elon Musk. Amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. We're like this. I
Yeah,
mean, me and
your
him.
buddies. He has spoken one word to you in text, the word no.
Amazing. Amazing.
So I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. So do you agree with him? And what do you think his context is? Is he trying to be cheeky, or what's his thought there? And what's your thought? So for
Again,
context, maybe we should say you
yeah,
asked, should people in their 20s max out their 401k? Was that your question?
that was the question. And Elon said very eloquently, no. And my mom texts me. She goes, "Why? He didn't elaborate." I'm like, "Mom, he's like the busiest person in the whole world. Of course he didn't elaborate." Um, I do agree with him. I do not think they should max them out. I think they should max the match. If you're getting a
Yes.
match, whatever that is from your employer, I think that you should do that. I would be curious if Elon does think that. I can't imagine he thinks too much about 401ks. I mean, talk about leave your chips on the table. That's all he does, right? He
Yeah.
takes PayPal money, he rolls it into SpaceX, takes
Yeah.
SpaceX money, rolls it into Tesla and the Boring Company and Twitter. I mean, that's all he
Yeah.
does. I can't imagine he's got a 401k. And also a 401k is useless for a certain level of
Yeah.
income where, you can only put 20 grand in 20, whatever. Well, I guess if
Yeah.
you own your own business, it's like 50 something, but that's not a drop in the bucket to a billionaire. So I don't know what Elon would think, but if I could go back, I did max my 401k for a while in my 20s and I had a sales job. And so I maxed my 401k, maxed my Roth IRA, met my husband, got him doing the same thing. And we still had a little bit of money left over because I was doing really well in sales and he's an engineer. This is before he had the firm. But anyways, I would have. We have a lot in our retirement accounts. Something around between $600,000 and $700,000 at 31 and 34 years old. It's almost like too much if you
Yeah.
do the math. If you take into account the exponentiality, if you will,
Right.
of that. So if I could go back, I would have either gone to the brokerage, something that I can access earlier than retirement age, or put more into real estate earlier. Probably
Yeah.
is what I would do. Um, at the end of the day, money's money. I still invested it. So
Yeah.
I think we're probably splitting hairs there, but that is my opinion on that.
Yeah. It does. I think maybe what Elon's getting at is you're kind of giving the government some control of your money. And I know he's kind of against that.
Yeah.
And maybe he's just being cheeky in that, the nuance would be like what you said. You absolutely need to invest that match. And even if you just put it in a T-bill or a bond or something, you've already doubled your investment, right?
Right.
From your perspective, assuming that the company truly is matching it and it's funds that you wouldn't get if you didn't do it, didn't do that. So that's doubling your investment. And that's, I would take that all day long. So Yeah. Anyway, that was fun. Congrats on getting
Uh,
a single syllable out of Elon Musk.
Thank you. Yes, Elon's not known for his nuance, so
Right. Right.
especially on Twitter.
Well, and I
So
would I
anyways,
would assume that he's probably thinking about his employees. Not himself, because obviously for himself it doesn't make any sense.
right.
But I'm
No.
assuming he's thinking about his employees, and he's just saying, no, you shouldn't max it out.
He must have those conversations. I wonder what he would say if it was like, yeah, my whole 401k is a Tesla stock. He might be like, max it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
let people, I know you said what your website is, but if you wouldn't mind, just let people know like what your links are and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So the website is theunexpectedinvestor.com. The book is available on Amazon. You can just go there, type the hacker method. We have a Kindle version, hardback and paperback. And you can find me on social media at Unexpected Investor at all the major channels.
All right, guys, you can follow me on Twitter, X at Adulting is Easy, Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real. If you want to know what Brian looks like, or if you've never seen my face before, go over to YouTube at Adulting is Easy. If you like this episode, I think you guys might also like episode 104, How a Family of Four Lives on Less than 60K and Still Invests. Thanks again for
Nice.
listening, everybody. Hopefully, Brian and I have made adulting a little easier for you.